Hello, good morning. Okay, so what's happening this morning is that 5 of us are going to give short talks about our own way in or our own approach to one of the stages of Metta-Bhavana. And we're going to do it in order, making sense. And I'm going to go first, so that's why I'm standing here to introduce it, because I'm going to talk about self-metta. And I'm looking to see where my timing person is. Hello. So he's going to wave at me when I've talked for long enough. So. Oh, that's what I need to hear right now, actually. Okay, so I'm talking about the first stage of the Metta-Bhavana. So that's metta for ourselves. And I'm talking about it in terms of both on the cushion when we're meditating, but actually in a way even more importantly off the cushion. So metta for ourselves in life. And I know when I first came across the idea of the Metta-Bhavana, I thought it sounded fantastic, until I got down to trying to do metta for myself. And then it just really pushed loads of buttons for me. It felt like it was a kind of really self-indulgent thing to do, like a kind of, fancy spending all that time thinking about yourself. It just felt like a really unnatural thing to do. But interestingly, as time's gone on, and I suppose I spent time with people who've done the Metta-Bhavana for a long time, what I noticed in them is that people who seem to me to have the most self-metta actually spend less time thinking about themselves. You know what I mean? They're not self-obsessed, actually. It's the opposite. By being able to love themselves and look after themselves, they actually don't have to do all that kind of thinking about yourself all the time that I certainly do a lot of. So actually I think, although it felt to me at first that doing self-metta was a very kind of selfish thing to do, almost. I think it's the opposite. And actually I think self-metta is really powerful. Because if you could imagine a person who is very contented in themselves, so they are able to look after themselves. And by that I don't mean that they don't have, connections with other people, because that might sound a bit weird. But basically a person who's not neurotically looking to other people to give them love, give them praise. A person who is able to cope with the ups and downs of life, who's contented. I think that's a lovely idea of that kind of person. And from that love for themselves, they're just able to give love to other people. It's like love can pour out of them. So they can give to other people not from a sense of duty or anything like that, because they should do, but because they want to. And I think that's what self-metta can lead to, being in that state. So I think it's a really powerful thing. And actually you can always go as far as say a lot of the world's problems come from a lack of self-love. People run around kind of having wars, destroying the environment and stuff like that, because they're not contented in themselves. They're looking for something else that will make them happy. And in fact, all their anger and all that kind of stuff that's coming out, I imagine, comes from a certain amount of self-anger, actually. It's like, they're not happy with themselves, so they make the world a horrible place for other people. So I think actually self-metta is a really powerful practice. So my own experience is one that my conditioning has been one of I'm very self-critical. And I think in the West it's one that we often share. Interestingly enough, actually, when they said to the Dalai Lama about how people in the West have a problem with self-esteem, he couldn't get his head around it. It's like, well, why wouldn't people love themselves? Of course they do. So I think it is quite a cultural kind of thing, actually. And there might be people here who don't have a problem with it, in which case that's fantastic, okay? Don't feel like you have to have a problem with it. Just because I'm saying that I do, But basically, it's like often, particularly in the past, my thought processes are very undermining. So I'll say more horrible things to me that I would never say, even to an enemy, actually. It's like if I make a mistake, I really tell myself off, and I'll say, really badly, and it's just really unhelpful, actually. But there's this whole kind of self-talk that goes on that is not loving. It's not loving at all. And it means that I get very defensive, actually, because I've noticed that the more I do that to myself, the more I want to kind of get away from people and protect myself and build up all those barriers. And actually, the more that I can be loving to myself, the more I can connect with other people. So in my kind of time I've been doing self-metta, there's been lots of different things that I've worked with, but there are 5 ways that I'm going to say today, if I have time. Okay. So first thing that helped for me was just dropping those critical thoughts. Just let them go. They're just thoughts. I don't know where they come from. Doesn't matter. Let them go. And to be in my body. So many people actually, I think, over the retreat has talked about how the body is where metta can come from. And that's really strongly my experience. So I was thinking this morning, what do I do at the moment in that self-metta stage? And what I do actually is, my experience actually is here. It's interesting that Vidania's one is his heart. I'm afraid mine is in my belly. But I get this kind of a sense of softness in my belly. And I say the phrases. I say, may I be happy, may I be well. And somehow that sense of softness and well-being in my belly spreads. I just stay with that experience and allow it to be my experience. So what I'm wishing myself really is for that experience to continue. So that experience of well-being that seems to come from here, I just allow it to grow. So that's how I do self-metta at the moment. It's very much in the body. And as Vidania said yesterday, if you experience it in your body, then it's out off the cushion, you can use that as well. So I can sometimes, not always, but sometimes come back to my body and come back to my belly and soften and let metta be there, rather than being all this kind of crazy stuff in my head. It's like moving from being in my head down to here for me. So that's one thing, drop the thoughts. The second is drop the judging. So actually, you'll remember that metta is unconditional. Okay? It's not conditional on whether we're good or bad, beautiful or ugly, short or tall. It's absolutely unconditional. So we are all worthy of metta, of love, whoever we are. And that includes you, okay? That includes you. And actually thinking that for some reason we're particularly unworthy of love is being a bit conceited. Because it's like, why are we any different from anybody else, okay? Everybody is worthy of love. And probably we'll find in our experience that we're kind of happy to say that for other people, but it's quite hard sometimes to say it for ourselves. But it is true. It's just, perhaps some of us have grown up with conditioning that makes us feel like we have to do things to be loved. And actually, that's not true. We could do nothing at all, absolutely nothing. We could absolutely still be worthy of love. There's a phrase you might want to look up if you haven't come across it before, which is the greater mandala of uselessness, okay? Which is a Sangharashta thing, which is about we absolutely don't have to do anything to be worthy of love. Okay, so if what you want to do for the rest of the day is lie in the grass and do nothing, that's completely fine, okay? Sorry, Matt's looking at me, she's not sure. But,
I just hope not everybody.
Maybe you'll lie in the grass, you'll feel such self-love that it'll come out and you'll think, I will help what the cushions are. But I think that's just like, it might be something, if you haven't come across this idea before, it's kind of interesting, is to really explore that, Anyway, so I've talked about that. Okay, so the third thing is ethics. So actually, I suppose in a way this is a bit conditional. It's not unconditional love, but we do judge ourselves, and sometimes, quite rightly, we do things that are unethical, and it is quite right to feel some shame about that. However, the more ethically we can behave, the less we need to feel shame. So the more we can actually feel pretty good about ourselves. Because if we're clear what our principles are, and as much as we can we live by those principles, we are going to just naturally feel lighter and better than ourselves. So actually ethical practice is a way to self-metta. The fourth one is friends. So a very strong experience for me in my training for ordination was I had some friends who I really respected and looked up to, and they seemed to think I was all right. And it was just like, I just had to kind of go, okay, so who am I going to believe? Me with all my lack of self-worth stories, or these people I really respect who seem to think I'm all right. And it really helped just to think, well, I'll just go with them. I'll go with their opinion, because they seem to have, they're more in touch with reality than I am, actually. And that really helped. So the whole training for ordination thing for me really helped with my confidence in myself. And I'm just, a human being. I'm fine. Okay? And then the fifth one is self-compassion. This is something I've really been, I suppose this last year has become more important to me. So some of you will have come across the idea that when we do metta, we send it out into the world, and we come across some people who are suffering. And when metta meets suffering, it naturally becomes compassion. Or we might meet some people who are pretty happy, and when metta meets those people that are happy, hopefully it becomes sympathetic joy. Okay, and So what happens when we meet our own suffering? So our meta meets our own suffering. And life is going to involve a lot of suffering. Every day there's going to be suffering. And how we respond to that can really make a difference, I think, to ourselves and others. So what we can do when we meet our own suffering is we can tell ourselves off for being really stupid and for suffering. We shouldn't suffer, really you shouldn't do that. Or we can kind of go, I'm suffering, and then have a sense of kindness for ourselves. I mean, we can even go as far as talking to ourselves and saying, it's really hard where you are now. May you be well, may you be happy. This is a hard thing you're doing. Just appreciating where we are and the suffering that we're experiencing. Because if we don't do that, we'll cut off from our own suffering, and then we cut off from other people as well. So I'll just finish with the last thing, actually. It's that as well as self-compassion when we meet our own suffering, we can, of course, have self-joy when we meet our own happiness. And that's fantastic, because then we just get happier and happier. And that's really good. That's the 5 minutes.
Yeah. Gosh, 7 minutes ain't long, is it?
It feels quite long when you're standing up.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the second stage, the metabar with a good friend. And when I was told that I was going to be talking on the second stage, my initial reaction was, oh, gosh, that's great, that's really easy. Gosh, it's fairly straightforward, isn't it? It's like a good friend. When we're taught the metabar, or we're introduced to it, or when we read about it in a book, we're quite often told that this stage, for many people, is the easiest stage. When we're new to the practice, we're advised that we pick someone who's alive, someone who's a similar age, someone who we're not sexually attracted to, someone who's just a good friend. And we're told that the metta will just naturally flow out to them, because we've already got feelings of loving kindness, we've got care, concern for their welfare, we've got affection, we've got a desire for their happiness. So those things are already present. So we just bring our friend to mind, we dwell on them, and these thoughts will naturally grow. Our present heartfelt desire for our friend's well-being just naturally develops. So, okay, and then I thought, well, I'm going to talk about my experience of this stage, and it's not always that straightforward for me. So we'll come to that. So we choose a friend for this stage, right? We pick who we're going to think about, someone we like, someone we admire, someone we respect, someone we love. And to start with, to get connected to this metaphor, and we might recollect them in a time or a place where they were happy, or perhaps times where we were happy in their presence. Maybe we connect with what it is about them that we love, what endears them to us. We may imagine ourselves in their presence, engaged in a pleasant activity together. I wonder what Piglet is doing, thought Pooh. I wish I were there to be doing it too. So our thoughts, it said that our thoughts fly instantly to their objects. As soon as we think of our friend, we're with them. Pooh's with Piglet. Maybe we're on a lovely walk in the country, or we're in a beautiful place. Perhaps we imagine giving them a present and just enjoying their reaction, their gratitude, their pleasure, and giving them a gift. We might even recollect a time when our friend was there for us in difficult times. And Van Gogh, quote Van Gogh, he says, "Close friends are truly life's treasures. Sometimes they know us better than we know ourselves. With gentle honesty, they are there to guide and support us, to share our laughter and tears. Their presence reminds us that we are never really alone." That's a really good quote from a very lonely man, Van Gogh. So, there are many ways, you've probably even got your own ways of connecting with your friend, bringing them to mind, cultivating those already existing feelings for them. And on that foundation, okay, we just easily work through this stage, pouring out that metta that's already there for a good friend, easy. But it's not always like that, it's certainly not like that for me. This stage is not straightforward for me. Positive mental states can be precarious, they can be very fragile, and they can easily slip into negative ones before we even know it's happening, even in the second stage of the metabhavana. And I was thinking about this, I realised for me there are two particular dangers. I'm going to just draw out these two dangers. There's probably loads more, but there isn't time to go into them all. There's what I call my near enemy and my far enemy to metta for a good friend. You could look at them perhaps in terms of an enemy within and an enemy without. And these are dangers that I constantly find I have to be on the guard against, constantly be mindful about. And it helps to label them, because then I can spot what's arising and say, oh, that's the near enemy, that's the far enemy, and deal with it. So the far enemy first, this is the enemy without. And quite surprisingly, you might think, this is ill will. But it's the far enemy because it's the complete opposite of metta. Okay, so how does ill will arise in the second stage of metabhavana? Might be that it's something just as a result of something a friend's recently said or done. It might have just said something that's hurt me or upset me a bit, and it just kind of pops into mind during this stage. Or it might be that something that habitually upsets me about them. All our good friends have bad habits. And I've got two friends in particular I'll just talk about it. And I frequently put one or the other of these in the metabhavana in the second stage. One of them's a woman, no sexual attraction. She's my oldest, longest standing friend. I've known her for over 25 years. She's a very dear friend. I love her dearly. She's been a great support. She's very kind, very helpful, and we've certainly shared a lot of laughter and tears. The other's a male friend, again somebody I've known for over 20 years. So my first friend, I'll just call her friend A, she's got really bad timekeeping. She's hopeless keeping the time. We'll arrange to meet, say, 2:30, and she'll invariably turn up at 2:45. Or we'll arrange to meet, and 10 minutes before I'm expecting her, I'll get a text saying I'm running late, it'll be about half an hour, so I'm standing there. Where is she? And if I'm in a good mood, that's okay, I'll probably just smile and think, oh well, that's typical, that's her to a T, that's alright. I might even expect her to be late. We'll arrange a time I expect her to turn late, not be bothered about it. If I'm not in a positive state, it can really annoy me. I think, oh, typical, late again. And my other friend, friend B, he has a habit of just talking incessantly. I met him recently, and as I hadn't seen him for a long time, and as he's coming down the road, he's talking. He's just going on. And he's going on and on about himself, about what he's been doing, who he's just saying that. And he went on yakking for half an hour. I'm not kidding, half an hour. And then he just paused and he said, oh, anyway, how are you? Oh, yeah, okay. I started to explain what I was, and he interrupted me, going, oh, yakking again. No, both these friends, I love them dearly. They're lovely friends. Got a lot of affection for them. So I'll bring one of them into the metabhavana, right? And either of these two. It's going along smoothly, loving thoughts, going out to my friend. A was me. So then suddenly this thought will pop in from nowhere. A was late for a meeting recently, and I was annoyed at her lack of mindfulness. I was annoyed at her lack of mindfulness not taking me into account. So ill will arises. Or I think of friend B in this stage, and suddenly this thought will pop in that he was late, he was talking about himself, and he didn't take my me into consideration. Ill will arises again. So in both these cases, this lovely flowing metta just gets clogged up, it gets sticky, it gets muddy, switches into ill will. My friend's irritable habits come up. And quite often, aware of time, these feelings, this negativity, this ill will, I think it stems from something else. And this will bring it to the second point. It's not that I'm wanting them to change for the better for themselves. I'm wanting them to change for my sake. And this is the near enemy to ill will. It said, put in the Visuddhimagga like this, it said, This is a Buddhist text. It says, when metta succeeds, it eliminates ill will. When it degenerates, it becomes selfish, affectionate desire. So this is the second, just mention briefly. This is the enemy within, selfish, affectionate desire. It's the danger of losing sight of our friendship by drifting into thoughts of what they are to us alone, how they can fulfil our needs exclusively. At worst, it's a kind of lust, it's a kind of neurotic neediness from our friend. It's very subtleness as well, unconscious even sometimes, very subtle. It's what I can get from them. So it's a near ending because it appears like metta, it's a heartfelt desire for their well-being, but it's conditioned by what I get out of it. Okay, nearly finished it. It's a story I tell myself, right? It goes like this. If only she would be wouldn't be more constantly late, if she'd be more punctual. If she could break this habit, she'd be better off. She'd be more mindful, she'd be more aware, she'd be more spiritually developed. And I'd be happier. Or my friend, it'd be, if only my friend B, stopped talking all the time, he'd be able to develop more awareness of others, me. He'd break his habits, he'd be more attentive, he'd develop spiritually, and I'd be happier. So it's a rationalisation, really. I don't like my friends' habits because they're unskillful, they're not good for them, they'd be better off without them, and I'd be happier as well. And so the antidote is the obvious ones. Gratitude, forbearance, patience, glad that they are my friends. Unconditional metta, not conditioned by what I get out of it. Okay, I'm going well over time, so I'm just going to end. Badania quoted Alred of Rievaulx, saying he was a good old Yorkshire chap. Well, I'm going to quote a good old Yorkshire lass, which is Charlotte Bronte. So she said, if we would build on a sure foundation of friendship, we must love our friends for their own sakes, not for our own.
Okay. So, I'm talking about the third stage of the Metta Bhavana. And this is a very decisive moment in the meditation for me. I think as a beginner, it's the time in the third stage where things shift from feeling more familiar to feeling less familiar. Because I think in the first stage, even though we might struggle with it, I think we all have some kind of self-preservation driver. We've got something, we look after ourselves to a certain extent. So I think there's a bit of a familiarity, possibly, when we come to learn the first stage, well, we kind of know a little bit what it's like to look after ourselves. We might not have started actually cultivating metta towards ourselves, but we do look after ourselves. And we have an experience of being in our bodies. We know ourselves to a certain extent. And I think with the second stage, that can be the easiest stage as a beginner, because a lot of people are familiar with feelings of friendship and have a connection to a friend and have a sense of what that feels like. They've got something to build on. But I think it's the third stage, for me, where things get decidedly Buddhist. So before I became Buddhist, I had no connection with most of those neutral people. The bus drivers, receptionists, shopkeepers, and so on. And my relationship with them was one of disconnection, actually, self-consciousness and mistrust at times. I'm eternally grateful, actually, for the opportunity that the Metta Bhavana has given me for connection and engagement with all the scores of people who are eligible to be in my third stage. For my third stage to have a chance at effectively cultivating metta, I need to be able to bring an imaginative engagement to my practice. I need to actually wonder, what are they doing right now? What are they like? In this very moment, when I'm sat on my cushion, I wonder what they're up to. And if I can do that, I can get a sense of their lives, because often they're a mystery to us, aren't they? we actually don't really know. We might see them every day. We probably don't even know their names, you know. We just see them. We have no idea. So somehow to get into that stage, you have to almost create a story about them, because we don't know. We've got an absence of information, haven't we? Sometimes I might imagine that I'm sat down next to them on a park bench having a conversation with them, asking them, actually engaging in a dialogue, going, oh, what would that be like if I actually spoke to them? How would that be? Yeah. A lot of our third stage people are connected to us, but we might not yet have fully appreciated how connected we are to them. We're supported by so many people. We get driven to work every day, possibly, by a bus driver. We get served food every day, maybe in the canteen or a cafe by people. People are making food for us. If we eat out a lot, we buy our food at the same place. People are selling us our food, packing it up, giving it to us, looking after our children at nurseries, teaching our children at schools, taking our rubbish away every week. All these people are supporting us. Verse 2 of the Dharma Sutta says, "My very life is sustained through the gifts of others. This should be reflected upon again and again by one who has gone forth." So whilst I'm cultivating metta, well-wishing for my third stager, I'm actually also experiencing the truth of interconnectedness. And I'm seeing all those invisible threads that link us all up. Bhante says that in the third stage, we apply to this person the same benevolence and care that we naturally feel for our friend. It must be emphasised that what we're trying to develop is not a thought, not an idea about developing a feeling, but the actual feeling itself. And this can be hard. Developing the actual feeling itself and not just a thought of well-wishing. So yeah, I think imaginatively engaging with a person can be really hard, but it also can help. Sometimes I play a trick on myself to show myself I can get the feeling rolling. Sometimes if it's really not working in the third stage, I sort of nip back into the second stage and I sort of swap the people around really quickly to try and trick myself. Because actually it should be possible, shouldn't it? You know, that's actually what we're trying to do. You know, when we kind of do that equalising bit at the end, that's actually what we're doing, isn't it? You know, that it is possible. It is possible, maybe one day, to feel the same metta for everybody. Or sometimes what I do is I kind of almost imagine it's like spreading jam. I kind of go back and sort of spread it forward, go, come on, you can do it, just keep it moving, keep it moving. You know, if it feels blocked, kind of imagine spreading it like jam, moving it on. Off the cushions, the work we put into the third stage can help us with feelings of disconnection or isolation. I remember a very pivotal point for me actually with the third stage was being sat up in the night with baby Matilda, my daughter who's now 5, but baby Matilda in the night doing a night feed. You know, maybe I'd been up like second or third time in the night, just completely spent, you know, frustrated, knackered, a lot of self-pity and frustration, feeling really isolated. Just wanting it to be over. And then thinking, oh yeah, well, so there was this woman up the road from us, and she'd had her baby 2 weeks ahead of us, and I knew that she was having terrible nights, worse nights than we were, actually. And I thought, well, she's probably up right now, actually. So actually, I'm not alone. She'll be up there, and chances are she's probably having a worse time than us. So at least Matilda didn't really cry that much, but her baby really did. And I got thinking, actually, of all the women that I'd been meeting in baby groups and thinking, I bet they're all up too. And then I get thinking, I'm thinking, all over the world right now, at 4 a.m. in the morning, there are mums and dads up, pacing the floorboards, trying to settle their kids. And actually, it's not just the parents, it's the night shift workers, night nurses, doctors, people on call. I'm not alone at all. Everyone's out there, foregoing their sleep for the benefit of somebody else. In his talk, The Depths of Metta, given at our centre in 2007, Padmavajra said that the third and fourth stages of the Metta Bhavana show you where you're at. And I think by this he means that they sort of hold a mirror up to our relationships with those people. They really show us, when we get into the third and fourth stage, what's actually happening for us. So go looking for the effects of your practice off the cushion. Go looking. Is it making any difference? Has it made any difference? I started risking eye contact with my bus driver. I remember that years ago. Just trying it, instead of going, city centre please, so putting the money down, if you go. So actually looking at him and then actually starting to smile and then saying, hello, how are you? Sort of sounds simple, doesn't it? But we just don't, or we find that hard. And the third stage has helped me with that. Started talking to the cashier in the supermarket, smiling, talking to my neighbours. And my world has become a better place for it. Trust the karmic consequences of your practice. Look for the benefits of your practice and plough the shraddha, the faith that you might experience on seeing that it works, back into your meditation. Earlier I described the third stage as the bit where things get a bit Buddhist. And I think that what I mean by that is that we start breaking down the self-made boundaries and working on understanding the truth of interconnectedness. What we do in the third stage is radical. We're breaking down our socio-cultural conditioning and starting to live according to the truth of interconnectedness. There's no limit to cultivating metta. We can hear it described as boundless in the Karaniya Metta Sutta. And there's no limit to our learning and understanding, living out the truth of interconnectedness. It can lead us all the way to enlightenment. When we actively work on cultivating metta towards people we don't really know that well, we're actively working on what is standing between us and enlightenment.
Don't you just hate the fourth stage of the Metta Bhavana? If I had invented the Metta Bhavana, it would have looked a bit like this. Okay, love myself, of course. Good friend, very good friend, very, very good friend, expanding metta, and then just sort of let it out. In the knowledge that amongst all beings there are some irritating people and they can have some too. Why would you want to put a spanner in the works? In meditation on loving kindness, specifically think about someone that irritates you. It's crazy. There is a reason. And the reason given traditionally is for putting a difficult person is to test and strengthen our metta. Okay. So in the Metta Sutta it says, let his metta pervade the whole world without any obstruction, any hatred, any enmity. So what we're testing is how robust does our metta become? Can it expand unchecked, or are there sticking points? Are there points where it gets clogged up? And it should be a realistic test, according to the particular day that we're doing it. So don't go for the World Heavyweight Championship bout every time. Set yourself a realistic test. Avoid the arch enemy who's going to lead to anger, sort of gushing up like a geyser, because that's just going to sabotage your efforts. So you're looking for a realistic test just to see where you're actually at. Okay. So my strapline for this talk. So the thing to remember. My motto for the fourth stage: feel the irritation and do it anyway. Okay. Slightly borrowed that from somewhere else. Okay. Then I can relax about timing because I've given the talk now. Feel the irritation. So the first part of that is feeling whatever you're feeling and turning towards the feeling. So we're very sort of habitually turn away from feelings that we think are negative, that we think are bad or un-Buddhist. We sort of turn away from them. But you've got to start in the fourth stage with turning towards those feelings. So I've got a friend who's got a particularly ferocious temper, and quite frequently she texts me or she phones me and she tells me about someone who's done this and who's done that, or life's like this. And what I do very naturally is I stay with her, whether it's on the phone or I'm with her. I just stay with her. I give her time. I listen to her. I let her talk. Let her get it out of her system. I give her a hug. And in a way, that's the sort of attitude I need to have to my own irritation. It's like, when that comes up in the fourth stage, I need to stay with it, give it time, listen to it, give it a hug. So we're not about pretending that we're feeling warm, loving feelings. We're not about thinking that we should be feeling certain warm, lovely feelings. We shouldn't be thinking, I must get rid of these nasty, un-Buddhist feelings. We just experience our actual emotional response in the body. Because that's the truth of what we are feeling. We can only start with the truth of what we're feeling, otherwise it's a bit of a sham. So it's an opportunity to learn about ourselves and just be much clearer about what actually is going on, what's getting in the way of my metta expanding. What are the sticking points, what are the obstructions, what are the tangled knots. So we have to get rid of. And whatever the feeling, whether it's niggling resentment or righteous indignation or frustrated rage, there's many forms of ill will and anger. But whatever it is, we can turn towards it with kindness and without getting discouraged, without punishing ourselves for it. So self-metta is not something that we leave behind in the first stage. It's not something we sort of perfect and then move on from. Self-metta has to be taken all the way through the practice to make the other stages work. So back to my angry friend. So she's been talking, she's been venting her frustration, she's told me again and again what she's angry about. And then she gets to a point sometimes where she drops in a question like, do you think I'm being reasonable? And that sort of happens in the fourth stage of the metta bhavana as well. If you sort of stay with the feeling long enough, just allow it to be there, then that question, the doubt arises, well, is this the only possible response? Is it the whole story? Am I responding to the whole of the person? Are they merely an obstacle in my quest for satisfaction? Am I ignoring certain qualities about them? Am I forgetting ways that they've benefited me? What conditions have led to them behaving in the way that they're behaving now? How might they be suffering in this situation? So these sort of investigative questions can come up. So as well as turning towards a feeling, we can turn more fully to face the other person, not just the part that's annoying us. And so our feelings are usually underpinned by views and opinions. And so we see the situation through a certain set of lenses. And by dropping in these questions, by just investigating the feeling, we can soften the edges of those views. We can experiment with some different lenses. Sangha calls this paddling against the stream of our ill will. So in a way, just through investigating more fully what is the situation, bringing our emotional responses a bit more in line with reality, because that's actually the path to fulfillment. Okay. I'll just say that in doing this, in this investigation, it's not that we're searching for a reason to like them. It's not like if we investigate the situation enough, we can find a way to convince ourselves that they are actually lovable. That's not what it's about. As Satyajita was saying, that people don't need to prove themselves worthy of our metta. The metta is unconditional. There's no exam that has to be passed to gain entry into our metta. Okay, so it's an investigation in order to loosen things up for us, but not as a way of just putting a positive gloss on the person. It's not actually about changing our opinion, it's about going beyond our opinions. Okay, back to my angry friend. So we've had a little conversation investigating the situation, and then at some point she'll ask the question that I dread hearing, which is, what do you think I should do? And usually I say something skillful like, what do you think you should do? So related to the fourth stage of the metabargana, okay, so having felt the irritation and having investigated it, we actually have to do something, and what we do is we go beyond the feeling. Okay, so why should I base my life on my likes and my dislikes, on my opinions? Whatever I'm feeling, I can make the conscious, active decision to wish that person well. Okay, I may still disapprove of their behaviour, but I can still unconditionally wish that they make progress from wherever they're at. So yeah, feel the irritation and wish them well anyway.
Okay. Well, I was asked to talk about the fifth stage, but actually, if you've been following the advice from the previous 4 talks, then you don't need my talk. Because you'll just be on a high and you'll be coasting along into the fifth stage. Except that the fifth stage actually does present us with some new problems. Because my experience is that in the first 4 stages, I'm dealing with the known to some extent. Even the bus driver that I habitually put in my 3rd stage, I kind of know his face. He's from Sheffield, I can kind of shape his life, I can imagine a bit about him from the way he is. But then I get into the 5th stage, and I'm just faced with people that I have never even seen. I have absolutely no connection with, or that's how it seems to begin with. And actually, if I'm honest, my reaction to complete strangers is at best emotionally neutral, and at worst it's filled with mistrust and suspicion. And actually going to a new culture, a completely different culture, has made me realise how much fear I have of other people in situations where I just don't know what's going on and I can't read their signals. So actually the 5th stage is quite a challenge. So I'm going to talk about 3 ways into the 5th stage, or 3 ways that kind of work for me. There'll be lots of others. The first are to do with thinking, the second are to do with imagining, and the third, perhaps controversially, are to do with praying. So, first of all, to do with thinking. Well, I suppose that because the unique challenge of the 5th stage is my disconnectedness with the rest of the world, then in a way, the thing that's going to help me over that initial barrier is finding some connection. And there are a couple of reflections about interconnectedness that actually really help me in the 5th stage. And the first is just recognising a kind of common human experience, realising that actually just as I have an experience of wanting to be happy, wanting to be secure, wanting people to like me, wanting to have safety, wanting to be loved, so do all the very strange people in different cultures all over the world, and the people just around me. There's a common human experience. In fact, there's a common experience for all living beings of just wanting to kind of fulfill their potential, wanting to be safe and secure. And actually just contacting that kind of common experience can start me off in the 5th stage. But there's another sort of aspect of interconnectedness that can also help. And this is to do with it's a sort of common it's to do with the common aspiration. If I think about interconnectedness, what I think about is a whole lot of beings, some like myself, some not very like myself, but all like myself having some degree of consciousness. Millions and millions of them, millions and millions of them throughout space and throughout time. And, we are all connected by the common experience that I just mentioned. And actually, that connection itself is pretty mysterious and pretty magical. It's as if well, we're all manifestations of reality, trying to, well, fulfill our potential, trying to make reality a better place for us all. And actually, if I can really get into that sense of awe at the mystery of the reality that I'm part of, then I started with metta, because actually I've hooked into the free-flowing metta in the universe. All of these beings, all wanting happiness, all wanting security, all wanting love, all wanting the best for everything. So it's as if, well, there's this impulse in the universe, and I'm hitching a lift on it. I'm just keying into it and going with that. So those are the thinking ways into the fifth stage of metta bhavana for me. The imagining ways are, for me anyway, there are lots of ways of using your imagination in the fifth stage, but for me the most powerful use the archetypal Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, because sometimes my metta bhavana is a bit flat. Sometimes I can't really summon up a lot of metta, a lot of feeling. Sometimes my own store of metta seems a bit puny, but actually I can usually imagine a being that is not as puny in their store of metta as me. I can imagine a being that is just overflowing with metta. I can imagine the Buddha Amitabha, who radiates calm, serenity, happiness in all directions to all beings. And actually there's something about summoning up that figure and really imagining the metta that is emanating from him, that, well, it's metta, so it's there. And there's a sense in which I have contacted someone else's metta, but actually it was me that imagined it. So actually I am summoning up metta for myself. It's almost like the process of imagining metta and projecting it onto another being. Well, it just gets it there. It gives me something to start with, and then I can let it flow out in all directions. So it might be Amitabha, it might be Tara, the female Buddha of compassion, Bodhisattva of compassion. Might be Maitreya, the mythical future Buddha, who is going to bring Maitri and metta into the world. It might be, and it is most often for me actually, the thousand-armed Avalokiteshvara. And there's something, well, there's lots and lots of things actually about the thousand-armed Avalokiteshvara that will get my metta flowing. And the first one actually is simply that he's a symbol of the Sangha. And actually one of the things that I can do, one of the very, very simple things I can do at the beginning of the fifth stage, is to imagine myself in a situation where I'm sitting in a shrine room or I'm on retreat with a whole lot of other members of the Sangha. And I remember that feeling of connectedness and of inspiration. I remember the warmth that I feel from other people in those situations. And actually, that can just get me started. I can start with the Sangha and people that I feel connected with. And from there, the metta just flows out. But Avalokiteshvara, coming back to him, is also a symbol of altruism. And in a way, that aspect of Avalokiteshvara symbolises my highest ideal. It symbolises my wanting the best for the whole world. And if I imagine Avalokiteshvara wanting the best for the whole world, really wanting the well-being of others, then I can hook into that feeling of really wanting the best for other beings myself. But perhaps the most potent symbol of Avalokiteshvara is the symbol of the jewel that he holds next to his heart. Because Avalokiteshvara holds this jewel, and the jewel represents, it represents the bodhicitta, it represents wanting enlightenment for all beings, in all directions, in every time. So it kind of represents my highest aspiration. And actually, what I feel when I imagine the wish-fulfilling jewel, the jewel that Avalokiteshvara holds, is I feel my own longing. So I feel the sort of existential longing that I have for happiness for myself, but happiness for all beings actually. it kind of connects, it touches my longing for a better world in which everyone will be kinder, in which there will be kindness and there will be love for all people. Which brings me to my final way in to the fifth stage, which is prayer. And of course, we tell you on the newcomers course, don't we, that there's no God in Buddhism. So why would you pray if there's no God in Buddhism? And actually, I think that prayer is quite important, and my whole Metabhavana is often very, very like a prayer. But it's not prayer in the sense of wanting some higher being to do something for me. It's very much prayer in the sense of a kind of wordless aspiration, a really strong aspiration. In a way, my prayer is to reality itself. It's to the universe. And you could say that since the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas kind of are aspects of enlightenment, they're aspects of reality, perhaps I'm praying to them. But since I'm part of reality as well, you could say I'm praying to myself. I'm praying to some part of myself for what I want. You could say I'm sending a message to my subconscious about my intentions for the future, the way I want to develop, the way I want to be. And so you can explain it in different ways, but actually, really what I'm doing is I'm reinforcing an intention. And in a way, I think this is the most important part of the Metabhavana for me, that the power of intention is incredibly strong, especially repeated intention. And so if I sit down to do the Metabhavana day after day, week after week, year after year, then every time I sit down to do it, I recontact my intention for the happiness of all beings. And that sends an incredibly powerful message to my subconscious that kind of informs my actions in the world and my thoughts and my speech, hopefully, in the world over time. So I'm directing my energy in a particular attention, in a particular direction, towards a kinder, friendlier universe and towards a friendlier existence, really, for all reality. So, in a way, the prayer is, may all beings be happy. I mean, that sounds like a prayer, doesn't it? And I suppose I'm also praying, may I be a person who can do the Metabhavana and really radiate love to the whole universe. May I increase my capacity to love until there's no more I. May I be part of the great love, the Maha Maitri at work in the universe. May all beings be happy in their heart of hearts.